Hello and welcome to another amazing edition of the Business of Story. I get to talk to the most interesting people. I'm your host, Park Howell, and today you'll learn how to grow your business like a weed using brand storytelling with Wall Street Journal cartoonist and best-selling author, Stu Heinecke. But first, I want to direct you to an important episode we aired last week with Evolved MD and how we explored using storytelling to overcome the stigma of mental health. We all want to live healthy and happy lives, but according to Mental Health America, nearly 50 million Americans experience a mental illness, and half of them do not receive treatment due to stigma, poor access to mental health services, and more. Therefore, Evolved MD is reimagining behavioral health for all by integrating behavioral health services at modern primary care practices. Through storytelling, Evolved MD is committed to elevating the conversation on this healthcare crisis to spread awareness and empower everyone to take charge of their mental health. How are they doing it? Well, it starts with each of Evolved MD's employees' own mental health why story. Whether through personal struggles or a sincere desire to disrupt the state of healthcare, their stories, which Evolved MD calls mission moments, compel them to take action for not only themselves, but for the communities they serve. In practice, it looks like this. First, they're providing life-changing and in some cases life-saving services on-site at general practice facilities. They consistently publish thought pieces on the evolvedmd.com website to spread awareness, drive clarity, and create meaningful change. They participate in speaking engagements and host in-person community events at their headquarters in Scottsdale, Arizona, such as presenting the business case for well-being. They empower everyone, employees and the community, to take intentional time and space to practice self-care. And they share stories of challenges, solutions, strife, and success through their mission moments. Altogether, Evolve MD uses the power of storytelling to show everyone that no one is alone and our experiences are all normal. If you want to learn more about reducing stigma and increasing access to mental health services, and maybe even propping up your own mental health well-being, please visit evolvedmd.com. To make the impact on overcoming the stigma of mental health, Evolved MD is using storytelling to great effect. But as you'll hear today, it takes more than just great stories to create the growth you're seeking. Our guest, Stu Heinecke, suggests one way to grow your impact like a weed is to attach your offering to an existing trellis using his vine strategy.
And so for us, a vine strategy really is about just borrowing the infrastructure of others to gain dominant access to critical resources. It's encouraging us to collaborate with others, to create alliances and partnerships wherever we can, to gain access to sales channels that we never would have had access to or never would have been able to build ourselves. It would just take too long. By creating those alliances and collaborations, that actually helps us grow our businesses really quickly.
Stu's first book, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, introduced the concept of contact marketing and was named one of the top 64 sales books of all time. His latest release, How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed, lays out a complete model for explosive business growth based on the strategies, attributes, and tools weeds use to grow, expand, dominate, and defend their turf. He is a twice-nominated Hall of Fame marketer, NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center author-in-residence, and was named the father of contact marketing by the American Marketing Association. He has teamed with the NASDAQ Center to launch the Total Weed Award to recognize weed-like growth and audacity among various categories of entrepreneurial ventures. Today, you'll learn how stories are like seeds. They're part of the seed strategy with the WEEDS model. That's WEEDS model you'll learn about. how stories are what help you spread the word about your business in an utterly engaging way, and how stories also humanize us to the people we want to connect with, the people who can change our scale. So please welcome to the Business of Story from his picturesque Whidbey Island home on Puget Sound in Washington State, where it only rains 140.2 days per year, Stu Heinecke. Stu, welcome back to the show.
I'm so pleased to be here because, everything's about storytelling. And so it's just a great pleasure to be with you.
Well, it's really great to see you again, too. I had you on the show, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I'm coming up on my 7th anniversary of the Business of Story.
Wow.
So thank you for being a repeat guest here. And you've got a new book out that we are going to dive into a little bit more. And I got to tell you, I think I first learned about your book when you were on the Marketing Book podcast with Doug. And I saw the title of it as he was promoting the episode, and I loved it, Grow Like a Weed, because you're up in Whidbey Island, Pacific Northwest. And as you know, I grew up north end of Seattle, up in the Bothell-Woodinville area in the Pacific Northwest. And the very first image I got once I read your title is my dad coming in and getting me and my brothers and my one sister off the couch from watching Saturday morning cartoons, giving us each a scythe or a sickle, and said, you got to get out there in the North Pasture and cut down all those Canadian thistles, because if we don't, they're going to, spread like a weed. And we'd have to do that a couple times a summer. And I don't know why, it wasn't that hard, but I hated doing that, walking through hip-high grass and then whacking those thistles down. And, I was probably 8 or 9 years old maybe, but that cracked me up, because the title of your book, what it inspired in me is that reliving my Canadian thistle whacking down job as a kid.
I'm surprised you even agreed to have the interview then, because you must hate weeds after all that.
Well, no, I figured if there's, something good about weeds, we needed to hear from you today. What are they? Why should we be embracing this whole concept? I mean, we hear it, right? A euphemism of you got to grow like a weed. So what inspired you to write the book in the first place?
Well, so I wrote how to grow your business like a weed, because I was driving down. So I used to live in LA, and I was driving down the Santa Monica freeway when it used to move really fast. I don't think it does anymore.
No.
It's a long time ago. But anyway, it's 12 lanes of traffic. So 6 going one way, 6 coming the other way. It's roaring tires, concrete. And then there's a concrete median in the middle, about 40 feet wide. And there's a crack in the concrete median, and there's a dandelion growing out of that crack. Now, none of what I've just told you is surprising at all, right? It doesn't stand out at all. But here's the thing. I mean, because we see that all the time. We see dandelions. We see all kinds of weeds growing out of cracks in concrete. It's nothing unusual. But then when you think about what a miracle that is, how on earth did that dandelion get planted in the middle of all that rushing traffic and concrete? But we know how it happened, because we see the seeds flying around. They have highly mobile seeds. They fly around, and they probe every possible opportunity to take root, which is kind of like how we should be with our businesses. And so as I was driving by, all these thoughts rushed into my head, because it was like boom, and I'm by. But I'm just thinking, look at that thing. It's growing out of a crack in the concrete. It doesn't look like it's pissed off or upset that that its lot in life is to be in the middle of a freeway, instead of, let's say, like, it's not sitting there saying this really sucks. I saw myself as living at the beach, or something like that. It's not doing anything like we do. I mean, those emotions, those things that we do, get in our way, but it wasn't getting in its way. And then it was just in there. It was just in that crack, running its process. It looked happy. And I just thought, that's really significant that it was a dandelion. Something must be really special about dandelions or weeds, as opposed to, let's say, an apple tree or a rose bush or a petunia, because none of those were growing out of the cracks in the concrete. So whoosh, and then I was gone. But I just thought, wow, what an example those weeds are setting. And I need to live up to that in my career and in my business.
Now, you as an award-winning cartoonist in the business world, Wall Street Journal cartoons and the like, do you think your background as a visual storyteller. I mean, it's more than just visual because you're writing the captions to it and everything. Do you think that had any sort of impact on your ability or proclivity to see kind of this ironic business message or metaphor in that dandelion growing out there?
I don't think this book could have been written by anyone but a cartoonist.
Why
Actually,
is that?
well, because if you think about the nature of, well, let's say the nature of humor first. It's about truth revealed in a twist. I mean, that's why when we're laughing at something, before we can even catch our breath, we're saying, "Oh my God, that's so true!" Right? We find, I know everyone in the audience is saying, "Oh my God, yeah, that's right. That's exactly what happens when I'm laughing at something. When we find something funny, it's about truth. It's about something. It's about a point of agreement." That has served me well throughout my career. I've used that in marketing, all kinds of marketing campaigns. When I create a direct mail campaign with a cartoon about the recipient, but there's a gag in the cartoon, and if that cartoon is on target, if the gag is on target, they're saying, "Huh, but you know, it is." They're kind of like, "Yeah, but that's true. It is like you can't argue with it. It's true." So that lands this point of agreement that you expound on in the copy, and suddenly you have people nodding their heads yes, and it's all about that particular kind of storytelling where it's a gag. So it's a twist and it leads to truth. It leads to an insight. And that's exactly what I did in this book.
So, what is the seed strategy, or take us through the book a little bit, and what are people going to get from it? And can you share some of those ideas that they can leave this podcast with and start applying right away?
Sure. Well, the first thing, again, driving by the weed, the dandelion, I just thought it just set me on this track. What is it about weeds that makes them so special and so aggressive and so resilient? What are they doing? Do they have a unified model, perhaps? And particularly a model that we could use in business. Well, I wouldn't have written the book if the answer to any of that was no. So they do have a model, and it is directly applicable not only to growing a business, but I would say it's almost really the theory of everything about growing anything. So here's what I know you're wondering. Well, then what is that model? And what it is they all leverage a fierce mindset and unfair advantages against collective scale. And they do it according to a process that, in their case, is millions of years old. So it's well honed. On the other hand, it's a living process. So it's able to adapt, or let's say meet any challenge and go and evolve right around it. And so there are some amazing stories about all of that, but that's how they do it. And we can apply all of that to our business. So that's a little more complicated to answer how that happens. But isn't that amazing that they have a model that
Yeah.
we can see? Like if you have weeds in your yard, you can see them doing all of this stuff. And I think that's one of the wonderful things. You can go out in your yard and you can mow the weeds or do whatever you want. Then you'll watch and you'll see that they just run their process right over again. They keep coming back. We can do all of that in our businesses.
So, as a business botanist, I've just given you that title since you've gone out and taken the dandelion.
I'm
A weed strategist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does it pertain to my business?
Well, it doesn't if you don't want to grow. So, or
Mm-hmm.
if you don't want to survive even. So, I mean, it's about growing a business, obviously. If you think about what weeds do, they never do anything without an unfair advantage. And I would say that no business has any business in being in business if they don't have unfair advantage. They have to have a whole raft of them. And watch the weeds. You can see that they do the same thing. You can get inspiration and really instruction from them by watching what they do. We need to have the same thing happening in our businesses.
Give me an example of an unfair advantage in business, maybe one from your book.
I'm going to give you one from your book.
Okay.
You talk. I'm just going to say it. That you deal in the business of telling stories and I would say even the magic of storytelling, because that's how we take information in. We don't take it when it's just explained to us, or it's just sort of we're told to memorize something, perhaps, or there are all these other ways of trying to impart information, or let's say trying to impart perhaps an insight that you'd like us to operate from when we're dealing together. The best way to do that is by telling stories. That's an unfair advantage, isn't it? And also, there's the weeds model, which is within the weed strategy model, I suppose. They're one model within the other. But anyway, the WEEDS model, which is an acronym, WEEDS is Weed-Inspired Enterprise Expansion and Domination Strategies. And so that's 8 levels of strategy: seed and seed pod and thorn and segmentation and rosette and vine and soil and root strategies. All of them have these different functions. They're all there, though, to help you cultivate new unfair advantages for your business. One of the ones that you have is that you have this wonderful spot in our minds. You are known for explaining to us why it's important to tell stories, why it's important to have stories. And we all have them, but we're not perhaps so aware of them. One of mine is I'm one of the Wall Street Journal cartoonists. So when my cartoons appear in the journal, they reach 2.1 million readers. That's a nice, or even when I get to call up, maybe I'm trying to reach someone and I send a print of one of my cartoons, I get to say, hi, I'm Stu Heinecke, I'm one of the Wall Street Journal cartoonists, and I'm sending a print of a cartoon, one of my cartoons, and it's about your boss. Well, the assistants will say, what? What, really? So those are unfair advantages. And there are a lot of them out there.
How does someone find one in their business? Maybe they're listening to this, Stu, and saying, that sounds all well and good. Stu and Park have their real defined position in the marketplace. And you know what? I've got a pretty good thing going here, but I'm not really sure I've got an unfair advantage in it yet. Where do people go and look for those advantages?
They pop up almost everywhere, kind of like weeds, I suppose, would be an appropriate way to put it. But let's say your location might be an advantage. Network connections that you have might be an unfair advantage, particularly if you can enter sales channels that others can't enter because of relationships. So those relationships can be unfair advantages. There's a wine shop on Whidbey Island, and they are a little bit hard to explain, but they're in this building that has a very popular restaurant. And to get into the restaurant, you have to actually pass through the entrance, which is the wine shop. It's in the entryway. And I would say that is a big unfair advantage because, without doing any marketing at all, they have a lot of people walking through the wine shop. All they have to do is snag a few on their way into the restaurant. Hey, by the way, the restaurant doesn't sell wine, or serve wine. You might want to, but they just have all these people who are on vacation. They're out they're spending their leisure time. They're not going, well, they're going next door or just down the hallway a little bit, but they're there, and that's an unfair advantage. There's a little business services shop on the island as well, and they also act as a collection point for FedEx. That's a great unfair advantage because it brings people into their shop. There are a lot of these but I think the thing is that you got to sort of take stock and say, okay, what are mine? What are they, and how do we press them even further?
And I guess you really look at yourself, do some soul searching with how you show up every day and how that is expressed through your company or brand, and then own it as much as you possibly can. This whole thing about being vulnerable, I get that, and being authentic, and I get that. But it's really, I guess, leading with your core strength, your own uniqueness, which in there has to lie at least one unfair advantage, right?
At least one. And I know, so if you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't think I have any, you should, that would be a good place to look. I mean, to start with applying weed strategy, because you probably do have them. And if you're not aware of them, become aware of them and accentuate them, take full advantage of them. And then you should also then be working to cultivate new ones. So in the weeds model, again, there are those 8 levels of strategy. I'll just take one.
Can you go through those real quick for us? Again, You went through them very fast. Just spell out for me too, so I can write notes and put them in it. Right? Yeah. What are they? Number 1.
So seed strategy is really just anything that causes people to become aware of you and form the intent to transact with you. So it could be people talking about you. It could be your own media, social media posts. Could be articles in traditional media. It could be
the stories you're sharing about customer service and the impact that you're having.
Stories are, exactly. Stories are a great example of a weed that travels far and wide because people will
I mean,
share
you think about
stories.
a story as a seed, right?
Yeah,
Every
it's
time you
exactly
share
what
that,
it
you're
is.
planting a seed in
Yeah,
someone's head, and then they scale if done right and done well and are retellable, and you
yeah.
deliver on those promises, then they take off on their own.
And you want to put out as many seeds as possible, and then you want to make them as highly mobile as possible, just like dandelion seeds that we see blowing around. So that's one. Then the next level is seed pod strategy, and that really entails borrowing the reach of others to act as a multiplier of your seeds, of the seed strategy, of all those seeds that you're launching. And we see that in nature. You see the seed pod, the dandelion seed pod, the geodesic sort of dome of seeds, and then you see kids going, they're blowing on those things, and off they go. But the seed pods do something to give the seeds a little more of a chance to spread. So so that's seed pod strategy, and then there's
And an
thorn.
example of that might be with your own appearance right here. And the seed
Exactly.
pod strategy
Oh,
is let's go on the
absolutely.
business of story and introduce Stu and his great new book to my listeners. So what you're really saying is, as you're trying to grow out there, and whether you're a one person band or a million person band, look at other ways of attaching your seed to someone else's pod to help with that spreading effect. I go back to the Canadian thistles. The damn thing about those Canadian thistles, they're thistles and they stick to you. And you walk around and then you
Yeah.
become the person spreading the seed if you don't whack them down soon enough.
That's exactly. You're right. Those little burrs that stick to your clothing, or if you're an animal, the fur or feathers or something. Yeah, all of that. So we're using the reach of others to expand the reach of our own seeds. And then there's thorn strategy, which is probably pretty self-explanatory. Those thorns cause interlopers to stay away. I mean, it's a defensive strategy to defend your turf. So all kinds of things. I mean, patents and trademarks and so forth, but also included in that section, negotiating like a weed. So if
Mm-hmm.
a weed was going to negotiate, and it was not an adversarial one, but a friendly negotiation. Then it would make sure that the seeds travel. I mean, that it spreads throughout the organization you're negotiating with, so everyone's sort of buying into it. But otherwise, though, it's the thorn strategy really is about keeping interlopers out of your space. If you have fought hard to win space, to win territory, then you also need to defend that territory. And that's what those are about.
Can you give us another example of one of those? Do you see it in every day or something that our listeners might recognize?
Yeah, I would say anybody who has patented anything has some thorns out. Anybody who uses a well-crafted contract with teeth has thorns out. It was not to say, well, I'm gonna attack you, but if you don't abide by the contract, I will. There will
Mm-hmm.
be a consequence to pay, so don't do it. And I think I mentioned patents and trademarks and so forth. There are all sorts of protections, of course, through the law that you can.
Can
That
you do a thorn strategy without invoking the law or in addition to it? So you've got good contracts and maybe you're protected by patents. That's, keeps people away. Can you do it in how you brand and position yourself to really own something?
are you someone to be messed with or not? Are you
Mm-hmm.
someone who will respond and make you sorry that you transgress? And that's a thorn strategy. And the reason that the reason it's thorn strategy is because if you think about thorns in nature, we might reach through them. I don't know. You might get pricked by a thorn and say, "Man, that was painful." And then the next time you see the thorns, and this is really what they're designed to do. You don't even go
Like,
for it.
I'm not going there.
Yeah, I'm not going there.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
so it's anything that causes transgressors or potential transgressors to say, you know what? I think no, we're not going to go. We're going to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And you're protecting turf that way. And the point is, we need to protect our turf. If we're not protecting our turf, and I would say a lot of probably 99% of businesses out there don't protect their turf or don't do it very effectively, then it means that we're just there for the picking, essentially.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that our territory is easy to take away, and that we don't want that to happen. So we want to make sure that that's covered in our approach to our business.
Gotcha.
Now, do you want me to go through the rest of them? There are.
Yeah, let's keep going. This is good. This is interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll cut you off if the time is getting too long, but no,
All
I
right.
love this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's do it.
the next one then is segmentation strategy. And it's really relevant to what's happening today because we are hearing about recession all the time right now. Some are saying that we're already in one, but if we're not in one, maybe perhaps there is one coming. And so the thing about weeds is that they're one of nature's great disruptive forces, and they disrupt the ground all around. We see it every spring. They're disrupting anything that they can plant their seeds into and take root. I should say, sort of grab onto with their roots. So, so there's that. But they also just built into their process. They have to respond to being disrupted as well, which we need to do. So. And we're about to be disrupted, apparently, with a new thing. I mean, we're just finishing the pandemic. Now it looks like we're heading into a recession. So the question then is, how do you prepare for that as a business owner? What do you do? How do you? That's what that level of strategy is about: is preparing for disruption. So, I mean, some of it is just, I think, probably just not losing your something.
So why do you call that?
Oh my God, it's coming! But really, so not panicking, but really just dealing with what is, and coming up with ways to lessen mitigate the effect of the disruption, or even turn it around to your advantage. And you were going to ask an example.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you, why do you call that a segmentation strategy? What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, when you're out in your yard and you find a weed and you say, okay, I'm going to pull it. Oftentimes these things are structured so that they're segmented, and so you'll grab the weed. If you grab it at the top, you'll only get a little piece of the weed because the weed is already designed. It already has this worked into its process that if it's just tugged on at the top, only the top will come off. And
the roots remain, and it remains strong.
Yeah.
And
mostly as long as the roots remain, unless it's an annual, but as long as the roots remain, the plant remains and it's viable. So it's just built to mitigate or limit loss due to disruption.
Mm-hmm. That's what you're talking about. So segmentation, I was thinking, brand position, market segmentation, but what you're talking about is operational segmentation. So if the recession comes in and you've got to lop off 5% of your jobs, your employees, you do it, but for the health of the 95% that remain and keeping the roots healthy.
Yeah, that, but then also just what are your strategies for mitigating loss or risk of loss here? What are your strategies for thriving during a downtime? I mean, we just saw this sorry, not the recession, but the pandemic. That restaurants, there a lot of restaurants just went away, but there were some that were resilient and agile, and they said, "Wait a minute." Well, for example, perhaps we have an email list of all of our customers already, which was prescient, but we already know how to reach them. Let's change the way we deliver our food because we know that people are still going to eat. We know that they still want to eat out. We know that they're not going to want to cook every night. So if we just start offering our pizza as a takeout thing instead of dine-in, we can change our business. And I'm sure we're all of us have seen this with restaurants. Some evolved and a lot of them didn't. And the ones that evolved as a result of that disruption, they flourished, and they're flourishing now because of that. Because now they have less competition, but we're coming back out and we're starting to dine in also.
So you've got the seed pod strategy, attaching yourself to others to help grow your reach through those joining together with others. You've got thorn strategy that are going to keep the wolves at bay. You've got the segmentation strategy so that you're planning on how will you be able to thrive in down times. What's the next one?
The next one is rosette strategy, and that's really just about, so a rosette is, if you think of a dandelion in your lawn, you'll notice that it seems like they evolved to duck under our lawnmower blades. But actually, the weeds, the leaves that they produce are this radial fan of leaves that spreads out at ground level. It's just flat. It's just a flat mat of leaves. And what that does is it prevents anything near it from growing. It takes away it takes away all the access to water and sunshine. So if you pull a mature dandelion out of your lawn, suddenly you'll see you have a 10-inch hole in your lawn because it's killed off everything. It has created a zone around it that nothing else can compete in. And so we want to be doing that in our business actively. So that part is just about actively looking for more and more unfair advantages to attach to your business.
And the idea is to keep, again, your competition at bay. It's sort of a thorn strategy, but done not on the legal side. It's really on the business strategy and execution side.
Yeah, it's about saying what other unfair advantages can we acquire or develop. I mean, it could be new technology, could be buying a company, perhaps. There are a lot of different ways to acquire these new advantages, but the point is to be aware of the fact that weeds never do anything without unfair advantages, and neither should we. And that this one level of strategy is to say we need to be constantly looking for new unfair advantages, perhaps outside of the levels of strategy already that are defined in the model.
An example of that might be like Uber and Uber Eats. So as Uber, traffic died off because of the pandemic, COVID, whatever, they came up with Uber Eats to be able to deliver to your home so they can still be employing their car drivers. And it's kind of, I suppose, a segmentation strategy, but maybe even a little bit of a Rosette strategy.
Yeah, well, Uber is pretty interesting because as far as I recall, they were first to market as a rideshare app, or certainly as a broadly used rideshare app. And then Lyft came up afterward. I don't know who came first, but certainly Uber came up first. And obviously that market domination is a huge unfair advantage. Just actually, if you think, the Uber versus Lyft, kind of interesting. Uber versus taxis, hugely interesting, because the taxis really were their competition as they started up. And taxis, my God, the drivers were gruff. They never wanted to give you change. They would take you all, if you didn't watch it, they'd take you all over the place. So there was never trust. There was never a relationship. There was never a positive impression of using taxis ever, as far as I can tell.
They're a commodity.
Yeah, they're a commodity, but they were unpleasant to use, and you had to watch them, because if you didn't watch them, they'd cheat you. They in every possible way they would cheat you, and it was a horrible model. So they hadn't engendered any sort of customer loyalty at all in their behavior. But then, and then how do you hail them? Well, you stand outside and you whistle, or if you're in New York, maybe you call, but none of it was terribly useful. But then here comes Uber with an app, and you only pay for. I mean, you select where you're going and it sees where you are, it selects where you're going, it hails a driver. There is an agreed price. For a long time, there wasn't even a tip, but it's nice to tip people. So that's okay, but you weren't going to be. I mean, like the cab drivers just didn't. If you gave them a $20 for a $15 cab fee, they didn't want to give you change.
Yeah.
So all of the hassle of taking cabs was removed from getting rides through Uber, and so that was a huge unfair advantage, and that overtook the entire industry of taxi drivers. And that was probably that's a great example of an unfair advantage.
Oh. All right, what's the next one after the Rosette strategy?
Well, then there's one of my favorites, which is vine strategy. And if you think about what vines are, they're just tubes, sort of, with leaves. And they've got roots. They've got pretty deep root systems, but they haven't built much in terms of infrastructure above ground. They haven't built trunks or great expanses of branches or anything like that. They're just a tube, a climbing tube or an attaching tube. And what they do then is they climb up whatever is nearby, a fence, a house, a building, or trees. And they end up, particularly in the case of trees, they'll end up in the crown of the tree. And some of these vines actually kill trees, so it's not good. But they end up taking over their dominant position for those resources that all plants need. For plants, it's sunshine and water, but for us, it's sails. and maybe access to capital. But that's what vines do. And so for us, a vine strategy really is about just borrowing the infrastructure of others to gain dominant access to critical resources. And we do that by it's encouraging us to collaborate with others to create alliances and partnerships wherever we can to gain access to sales channels that we never would have had access to or never would have been able to build ourselves. We just go do it, or it would just take too long. So we just by creating those alliances and collaborations, that actually helps us grow our businesses really quickly. That's probably one of the quickest ways to grow a business.
So an example then that comes to mind to me is actually, again, this podcast, I started it 7 years ago, but Jay Bear over at Convince and Convert helped me start it. I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm really interested in starting this Business of Story podcast. And he goes, well, Park, as a matter of fact, in my network here, I want to build out a network of shows, and you could be my first one in here if you're interested in doing that. And I'm like, yeah, because he gave me an immediate listenership that I would have never had on my own. So in essence, that was the Vine strategy of taking him up on his offer. And then it was mutually beneficial. I certainly didn't climb up to his canopy and destroy his organization. We both benefited from this. Yeah.
Right. You want it to be symbiotic. That's for sure.
Exactly.
That's right. And, as I wrote the book, I'm also an entrepreneur. I run a small agency. And well, yeah, it's a small agency, but we work with large clients, and generally we work with large clients. We help them get meetings. We use those big cartoon boards, or I call them big boards. But as I was writing the book, I'm realizing, you've been doing way too much directly, just you doing everything, all of this, and you're holding it back. But if you were to turn around and start creating alliances with others. Let's say some of the thought leaders that I already know because I've interviewed them for my books, but the big top thought leaders in sales, and start teaming with them so that if they have clients, they already have these clients. If they have clients who are looking for ways to get their salespeople in the door with their prospects, well, boom, that really speeds the whole process up, doesn't it? Mm-hmm.
And like you say, it's a symbiotic relationship that they are being benefited by you and your talents and techniques, based off your first book, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, right? And your whole experience doing that. And then helping you grow so you're not just the single guy out on Whidbey Island trying to build this thing. Exactly.
Yeah. Or just, I've got a small staff, but trying to do it. Here's the problem. We're taught to or trained to rely on ourselves. We have to do that in society. We have to be self-reliant if we're going to succeed at all. And entrepreneurs are probably the most self-reliant people there are. So they have this natural instinct to say, well, I could teach myself how to do that, or I could do this, I could do that. But you can't do everything, and it will hold you back. If your labor, in fact, just a couple of things that'll be sure signs of this. If your labor is part of the deliverable, you're in the way. And if you can't take a vacation without the business slowing down or stopping, you're in the way. You're working at one-to-one leverage. So you need to expand that leverage to multi-channel and then finally collective scale. And that's all about using Vine strategies to do that. They're just critically important. So that's Vine strategy.
I love that. All right, one more, and then we'll leave the rest for the book. What's the last one for us?
So, well, there's root, and then there's soil strategy. So root is about cultivating and curating the assets of the business to maximize value. And there are lots of ways that we do that. But I'll just say that, when you think about, we just talked about this a little while ago, if you're pulling up a weed and you leave the root in the ground, let's say if that was happening with a dandelion, we know that's a perennial, so it lives 5 to 10 years. If you leave the root in the ground, it's coming back. It's not gone at all. You didn't get it. Probably the same is true of thistles. They're really similar.
Well, we used to have to weed the gardens all around the house and down by the pool. And what would you do as a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid? You go and you would snap off the top of those. Then you'd look and you put a little bit of the bark and the topsoil back over the top, and I'm done. Until a week later, when now they doubled. It's like you pissed them off, and now you got 3 times as many weeds to deal with.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that same thing that all of the life force of the plant is concentrated in the root is also true of businesses. And so we want to make sure that we cultivate and curate the value of our business as much as possible. I think one of the things that financial advisors talk about with new clients that are business owners is that they have to tell a lot of them. Basically, they'll ask them a question: is what you said, what you do, what you've done, what you've built saleable? And well, yeah, of course, I'm expecting an exit strategy. Okay, well then, next question: do you have a recorded process? Well, no. Then you have not built a business. So recording process is part of that, and just cultivating all of the assets of the business and doing it in such a way that it maximizes the value. I guess it's sort of what a CFO would do, actually. So, but then there's soil strategy, and I'll just say really quickly that dandelion seeds, they fly around, they land anywhere. Wherever they land, they grow. They don't
the
get
little parachuter guys that come in, you blow off and they take off. Right.
Yeah, and they'll grow in your rain gutter, in your roof. They'll grow everywhere. So the point is that they don't get to control the soil conditions so that it's optimal for their growth. They grow in whatever they land in. But we do have the opportunity to, well, actually, we should be thinking in terms of growing no matter what the conditions are. But we also have the opportunity to change those conditions for even better growth. And I think that comes in the form of, I would say, any company that is part of, or maybe even has sort of captured a movement, has created a great. And really, those movements can be internal and external, but a company that has done that has captured a great opportunity to create much more favorable conditions for growth, because people are just behind it. They want it to grow. You sort of have just popular sentiment driving it forward. You might want an example, and I don't know, the one that I'm a big fan of Elon's, and what he's doing and how he does it. And so just watching how he's building out Starship and just developing Starship, and it's all been playing out on YouTube. So you can see he started with just the most crude little prototype of it, but it's been progressing, and a lot of failures have been part. Obviously, it's fail, try, succeed, and suddenly he's doing something that no one else has done before. He did that with the Falcon booster system as well. They take off, they drop. I mean, they don't drop anything. They deliver. I was going to say drop off, but they deliver payloads. It could be equipment or it could be people, but they deliver payloads to space or to the space station. Then they come back down and land where they took off from. Is amazing to see.
It is incredible.
That's Elon doing something no one else has ever been doing.
Especially when he lands two of the boosters side by side simultaneously, and they basically touch down at the exact same time, maybe 100, 200 yards off from each other. It is mind-blowing.
Incredible to see that, right? So, but the thing is, what are they working on? I mean, they're working on delivery of cargo and astronauts, but they're also working on making mankind or humankind multiplanetary. I mean, making us also Martians. And that's what their company is doing. That's incredible. Just to watch all of this, I would think that anybody who works there would be saying, I just can't believe I'm part of this. This is fantastic. It's just that sense of we're together, and this is our moment in time to shine. And this is our mission. This is how we're going to do this. And we all believe in this. This is just fantastic. So that essentially, that's the essence of soil strategy.
Well, that is great. Last words on the book. Where can people find it and learn more about you, Stu?
Well, they can find the book anywhere except the airport at the moment. Actually, they can find it at Amazon, Barnes, and really wherever fine books are sold, I think is the line. But so Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I've been listening to the Audible edition, and that was interesting. I mean, I recorded some of it, but it was just interesting to hear the whole thing. So on Audible, it's audio CDs, and so anywhere books are sold, essentially.
Yeah. Good for you. And where can they learn more about you? Where should we send them?
Well, they can come to my website. They can come to my author site. You just have to remember how to spell my name. So STU, and then last name Heinecke, HEINECKE, almost like the beer.
Yeah, almost just missing an N.
Yeah, the N at the end. So StuHeinecke.com. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn and just mention that you heard me on the Business of Story podcast.
Well, I'm so glad that you made it, man. It's really great to see you again, and I'm glad things are going well for you up there in Whidbey, and really a fun book. Does it have any of your illustrations in it? Do you have your cartoons in there?
No.
No cartoons?
But I'm really proud of what's in there because I licensed art. I think there are these antique botanical renderings of all kinds of plants, but I licensed the antique botanical renderings of weed species from the Royal Botanic Garden in London.
Awesome.
It's really
Those got to be beautiful.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. They're really pretty.
Well, Stu, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Park.
And thank you all for listening to this edition. Please share it with your friends, family, colleagues, neighbors, aunts, uncles, grandparents, whoever that is out there and interested in growing like a weed. It's a fabulous book. Stu does some amazing things, as you know, and is a hell of a great marketer as well. So check it out. If I can be of service to you, come on over to Business of Story, where I can help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. And please join us again next week when we'll have another story artist right here for you like Stu. And until then, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for listening.